This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, I welcome you all into this Dell Boomi session. So in the last session, we talked about the types of integrations, right? So we can classify the integration types based on different factors, right? So what are the different types of integrations we have based on the fact where our touch points are hosted?
Synchronous, asynchronous, and one way.
On-premise, hybrid, and cloud-based.
And clouds.
Yeah, so answer would be on-prem, hybrid, and cloud because we have to classify based on the fact where my touch points are hosted, right? And what is a touch point?
It is an endpoint with which we'll perform integration.
Very nice.
So,
It is yes, it is an end system or endpoint with which we are supposed to do the integration. So we have Vishwajit, I think you're joining for the first time. You may not follow few of the things because we already had a session yesterday. So I'll share the recording, right? Some of the things you might need to bear with us. We'll anyhow cover as we continue talking, right? We'll revisit these things. Right. So one common question comes, and one common problem I have seen is how many interfaces can be developed between two touch points. Okay. Okay. So interface is something which will help us to establish the connectivity with an end system and exchange some data, right? So let's say there are two touch points, Salesforce and SAP, right? Now I want to do an integration between them, right? And to achieve that integration, we might use some integration platform. And one of the integration platforms we have is Dell Boomi. Since we all are here to learn Dell Boomi, so we'll majorly focus around Dell Boomi. So now you have to tell me, in this case, how many touch points are there?
two.
There are two touch points, right? Now the question is, how many interfaces can be built between these two touch points?
Many.
Okay, so you can build many interfaces between these touch points. So a lot of people think if there are two touch points, we can build only one interface or two interface because like when I used to work in pre-sales, so what will companies tell is okay, I have Salesforce and SAP and I want to use Dell Boomi. Please give me the estimation. How much amount of effort do you need to achieve the integration, right? But my touch points cannot tell me that how many interfaces do I need to build. So for example, there might be an interface which is used to do the integration for the order data, right? There might be another interface which might be required to do the integration of invoice data, right? There might be another interface which might be required for, let's say, items data. I mean, there can be many things, right? So the point I'm trying to say is you have to go and ask more deeper questions, which really helps you to understand that what is the amount of effort you need to burn to develop the integrations between two touch points, since between two touch points we can have n number of interfaces, right? So we do not have any fixed formula which will say if there are two touch points, these many interfaces, four touch points, 16 interfaces, nothing like that. Between two touch points, so touch points are nothing but the end systems with which we are trying to establish the integration, and we can develop as many interfaces as possible. So it always depends on the business. When I say business, it means the company for which whom we are doing the project, right? That what is their exact requirement, and accordingly we can come up with the number uh, and eventually the estimates, right? So I think this is clear. Apart from this, we talked about synchronous, asynchronous, right? One way. So which nature of integration you will build when you know that it will take some time for the response to be returned? Will you go for
Asynchronous.
synchronous, asynchronous? One.
Asynchronous.
Synchronous.
Okay. So whenever you see there is a delayed response, right? Then you will go for asynchronous. Asynchronous integrations are also sometimes called as combination of two one-way integrations. It is also called as combination of two one-way integration. Why two one-way integrations? Because one integration is established by the client to the server to submit the request, right? And another integration established by the server to the client to do a callback, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So now what we'll do is in today's session, we'll go and get into the Boomi platform and we'll try to build some small integrations. So now I think you have a basic idea what is an integration, why integration is needed, what are the different types of integrations we have, right? Uh, just one more question I want to ask. When you want to make sure the data which is generated in a system A to be available in system B immediately, which type of integration do you need to develop? Options
Real
are
time.
real time, not
Real time.
near real time, or batch based.
Real time.
Very good. The answer is real time. So whenever we want the data in one system, so let's say there is a help desk team, you go to some company, right? They take your data, and the moment they enter the data in their system and you want the same data to be available in other systems as well, right? Then that calls for the need of real-time integrations. Just one note, real-time integrations are typically achieved with the help of APIs. Okay, near real-time integrations are achieved with the help of queues or topics. Okay, this is not 100% true in all the cases, but I'm saying in majority of the cases, right? And batch-based integrations are achieved with the help of some database, FTP or SFTP, right? So making this as a note, we'll move on, right? We will just go and explore Dell Boomi. So what are the different services Dell Boomi offer? It offers integration, right? It offers API management, and it offers something related to the what? Master
Management.
data, master data hub also, right? So right now our focus would be majorly around integration and API management only. And now what is the true definition of iPaaS? A platform, a platform which helps an
Integration
enterprise to build integrations,
on cloud or anything.
deploy integrations, manage integrations over the cloud, right? With no overhead of maintaining the servers, right? Another important thing, one key jargon which I forgot to add, this Dell Boomi. What is the name of the platform which we talk about? What is the name of the platform given by Dell Boomi?
Sphere.
Boomi atom sphere.
Very nice. The name of the platform is Dell
Then
Boomi Atomsphere platform. It is not Atmosphere. Okay, this is the platform given by Boomi, wherein we can go, we can build the integrations, we can deploy the integrations, we can manage the integration. Now, another important note is this Dell Boomi Atomsphere platform works on multi-tenant architecture. What do you mean by multi-tenant architecture? When the single instance of the software is used by
multiple
multiple
users.
multiple users, or here in this case I will say multiple enterprises, then it is called as multi-tenant architecture, right? So I generally give the example of a flat, right? So these days we have a flat, and within a flat, let's say it is a 3 BHK. And in 3 BHK, there'll be common area, right? Where you will have the television, sofa, or some other common amenities, maybe the fridge, right? And there are three different rooms. Maybe in those three different rooms, three bachelors are there, okay? Or it might be a guest house of a company. So there is a common piece which is being used by all the people residing in the different rooms, right? So they are sharing that piece. So say, so this word, if you see multi-tenant, means there are many tenants. So it means there is a single software of the instance which is running, and that is maintained in such a fashion that one enterprise cannot look into the data generated by the another enterprise. At the same time, they can use a single instance of the software. So there is more sharing, right? It helps in reducing the cost for these uh, cloud-based companies also. And this Dell Boomi Atomsphere, or I would say majority of the cloud applications you see, right? These are based on multi-tenant architecture where single instance of the software is used by multiple enterprises. So many of us, hear about this kind of jargons, but none of us try to go and know the meaning, right? I mean, so when you go for any interview, right? So you have to basically know the meaning of what you're speaking, right? Because a lot of people have an idea but they cannot express it in words, and that is the gap, right? So you should have the words to express yourself. So these small definitions will at least help you to put your perspective forward in front of the interviewer. So now what we'll do is we'll go and log in into the platform, right? I have shared the credentials with many of you for the platform.
Sorry to interrupt you in between. Actually, it's not clear that multi-tenant tenant you told now, but how is they are going to manage these things? Like, if there are many users in one platform, so it won't be interrupted by each other's like call. If I want to delete something or other want to update or something like that, it won't be creating any error. Like
So
every user has its own authority or kind of.
yes, so these are partitioned in a such a way that all these different enterprises are maintained, though it is a single instance of the software, but these do not overlap each other until and unless an enterprise really wants to give the access to another enterprise for their piece, right? So it's like so just think of it like it's like a flat, right? In a flat there are three rooms. So can you see what is happening in other room until and unless other person gives you access to their room?
No, we cannot.
Right? You cannot, right? So there is a single flat which is being shared by multiple people, and it is partitioned in such a way that one enterprise cannot look into the data or the activities happening for the other enterprise until and unless both the enterprise have some mutual discussion or have a mutual understanding that we can get into each other's room, right? Or else these will always be secure, and these will never be overlapping with each other.
So we have to create an environment like there must be an admin for it to give authorities like grant and revoke, assess. And there must be something like that. Like we have to create an environment. Someone is admin, manager, like
So we don't need to take
using
all
like
these things. So the way Boomi has built their platform is multi-tenant. So whenever Boomi will give you the licenses, right? So as a company, if I want to go to Boomi and purchase the licenses, and let's say you are another company, you are also going to Boomi and purchasing the licenses. So the way the Boomi has built their product, okay, or the way the Boomi has built their offering, they will automatically ensure that these two things are partitioned and these two things are not overlapping. You as a user do not need to anything. So because you have to understand that you are more like a user, you are more like a person who is staying in that flat, right? But that flat which you're using has already been set up. It is already provisioned by Boomi.
okay, okay, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so now moving on, we will get into the Boomi platform, right? So if you remember, I mentioned in Boomi to develop any integration, we need what? What is a what is required to start building our integrations in Boomi?
Connector.
Process.
Components.
Okay, somebody said connector, not exactly correct, but at the same time, it is not wrong. So answer is we need components, right? Components are the reusable entities which can be used across n number of integration interfaces, right? So what are the examples for some of what are some of the components are like somebody mentioned connection is a component, operation is a component, right? Profile is a component. Many of you may not understand what I'm writing when I say profile operation. That's fine, you will understand it gradually. Certificate is a component, and which is one component that is very very important and is the core of any Dell Boomi integration solution we develop.
Process.
Process.
Very nice. Process is the core component in Boomi. Whenever we want to develop any integration, we cannot do it without having a process, right? So what we'll do is we'll go back to the platform, right? So this is how it looks like. I think many of you must have got the access to this platform. If one or two of you haven't got the access, please do let me know. We can work it out, right? So, so this is how the look and feel is. We have different types of services. As we were talking, we have integration, we have got master data hub, we have got API management, we have got flow, right? So we are right now into the build tab. Build tab. Where is this build tab? Under integration services, we have three different tabs: build, deploy, manage. So these will help us to build the integrations, deploy the integrations, or manage the integrations. Now I told you, right, there is a root folder, and within the root folder, right, we can create many subfolders. Yes or no? We can create many subfolders, and one of the subfolder we have is this one, Dell Boomi April 2021 batch. Here we can create some of the more subfolders. So there is no hard and fast rule that within one folder you can create 10 subfolders or two subfolders or no subfolder. That depends, right? What kind of customer you're working on and how many level of hierarchies do you need to maintain your processes in a easier fashion, right? So sometimes too many subfolders are also confusing. So that has to be a call which you need to take, right? And I just developed a dummy process, right? We will definitely start from scratch. So what I'll do is, so maybe if I go here and let's say I want to delete this, okay, there is a drop down, I will say delete, I'll say okay. So what this will do, I'll just close this window. If you go here, this Dell Boomi April 2021 batch, this is the subfolder, and there is employee integration which is empty, right? So what I'm trying to do right now is, this is the first time I'm trying to start with the hands-on. So much theory which we have spoken over last few hours. Now I'm trying to build some actual integrations, or at least I'm starting my journey to build my actual integrations. So whenever you're working you on this Boomi platform, you may not have so many subfolders which I have, right? You may just have a parent folder, that's all. So you can always go here and you can create a new folder like this, right? There is a arrow mark which will give you multiple options. We'll explore all of these options, but for now I'm saying new folder, and you can name whatever you want. If you see there are too many folders in your component explorer, and you want a new folder to be there on the top, you can always start it with hash, okay, or any other special character for that matter, so that it comes up in the start. So for example, I want to create a new folder with the name, let's say zebra. I'm just giving an example, okay, but I still want it on the top. Z comes at the last, right, from the alphabetical order, so I will say hash zebra. So what will happen is, it may not come on the top most, but I still see on the top, otherwise it might have gone at the bottom, right, Z. So this is something which we typically do. Okay, whenever we want to see any folder on the top, we just prepend that with hash, right? So now this is the folder which we will be working on going forward. Whatever integrations we develop, we'll make sure those all are encapsulated as a part of this folder structure. So we'll start with an, let's say, employee integration, right? And whenever we want to start with an integration, we need component. So I'll go here and I'll say new component, right? So this is the folder where I want to create a new component. And what I'm saying is I will say, I'll click here, go to this drop down and I'll say new component. So there are different component types. So you can see there are 15 to 20 different components we have. We have got process, we have got API, we have got flow service, we have got certificate, connection, connector operation, cross reference table and whatnot, right? But for now, I will start with process. Typically, whenever you start with a process, just write like this: process space pipe symbol, and let's say I'm writing sync employee. Let's say my source is some disk and target is, let's say, some DB. Okay, sync employees from disk to DB. What is the disk? Disk means nothing but the file system. Okay, I'll say create. So when the moment I hit on create, there is some pop-up coming with the name start shape. I really don't understand it. I'm pretty new to Boomi. So I'll just hit OK for the time being and I'll hit save, right? So this section on the left is called as a component explorer, where we have different folders and a new component got created with the name process sync employees data between disk and database. So now many of you may not understand what is disk. I'm saying disk is the file system of the machine where you are working, okay? Or where, just you can think of it as like a file system, that's all. Now here you have some arrow marks. There is a left arrow, there is a right arrow. So if you hit on the left one, you can just uh, hide the component explorer. There is a right arrow. If you click on that, you can just bring back the component explorer back, right? So these are small navigation tricks which you must know, right? When we are new, I mean, as a trainer, I might feel that these are pretty easy, but as a trainee, sometimes we are not familiar with all these things. So I just want to make sure that you understand these things. Now here there is a gear icon, and when you go here, there is an option called as enter full screen. So now when I click on enter full screen, you get into the full screen mode. So whenever I'm doing trainings, I prefer to use full screen mode so that it is much easier for you to understand. What is this area called as, where we see some
Process
kind of
canvas.
component? Okay,
Canvas. Process
okay. So
canvas.
absolutely, this is called as process canvas. I also call this as process playground. Okay, this, I mean, you can call as canvas only. You don't need to call it as playground, but I just sometimes call it as a playground where we will be playing throughout our any integration solution which we need to build for our customers, right? So you can think of it as like a football field where you will drag and drop different components, will arrange them in certain specific order, will do the necessary configurations, right? So that you are able to achieve the required business functionality. Now when you're working in this Boomi world, you will hear about components, right? Which I think which about which you have got a basic idea. Then there is another jargon or another keyword called as shapes. There is another keyword called as shapes. So shapes are nothing but the actions or the operations we perform on the data which is generated at the runtime. What is the runtime? Means at the time, or you can say at the time of execution, right? So what I'm saying is shapes are the actions or the operations we perform on the data that is generated at the runtime, okay, at the time of execution. So there are three types of shapes in Boomi. Important interview question. There are three types of shapes in Boomi. Even this is an important certification question. So there is a shape called as execute category of shape. There is a logic category of the shapes, and there are shapes from the connect category. So what I'm saying is there are components which are nothing but reusable entities, and there is another entity called as shapes. Shapes will help you to manipulate your data. Shapes will help you to change the flow of the data. Shape will help you to talk with some different third parties. So there are three types of shapes: execute category, logic category, and connect category. Execute categories, these are responsible for manipulating the data. When I say manipulating the data, it means doing some transformations, doing some validations, okay, all these kind of stuff. If you remember, I told transformation is the most important feature of any integration platform. If an integration platform cannot do the complex transformations, then the success of that integration platform would be very, very less, because there are so many features which are expected from any integration platform, but the key one, which is very, very significant, is transformation, right? Then there is another one, logic. What does this do? These are responsible for managing the flow of data. Okay, when I say managing the flow of data means, let's say you have to do some kind of routing, you have to do some kind of decision making, you have to do some kind of batching. Okay, so for all such kind of requirements, we have to use shapes from the logic category. And the third category, which is the simplest one, means these are responsible for establishing the connectivity with a third party application. Okay, with any external application, if we want to talk, then we have to use execute the connect category. Now another important note, this is very, very important note, and a lot of people get confused because they do not know about this note. Many of the shapes internally refers the components in Boomi. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is we have shapes. So first of all, you should have one thing very clear in your head, that is shapes and components are two different things. Okay, how do you know that? Components will always be available in your component explorer, right? Whereas shapes will be available in your process canvas. Components, once developed, can be reused across a number of integrations, whereas shapes are restricted to that specific process, right? Shapes are restricted or confined to the specific process. Components will have a revision history, whereas shapes do not have any revision history. So now a lot of people ask me this question, right? In Boomi, we are doing the development on the cloud. How about the this one code repository, right? So we have different tools in the market, right? Which acts as a code repository or a version control system, right? We have got SVN, we have got GitHub, GitLab. There are many, right? For version control system, Boomi has its own out of the box. So when I will say out of the box means it is a readily available feature. It has its own out of the box mechanism to manage the revisions of the different components. So whenever you're working on a component, it will always have a revision history. For example, if I go here, which component we are right now on? We are right now on the process component, right? So if you see, you can see here Can you see this is the name you have given to the component, but which actual component is this? Process, right? There is this I symbol. This I stands for info. If you'll click on this, it will route you to the documentation. So if I click on this, it will route me to the documentation of the process. So if I need to know anything about the process, I can go here. There is a folder option which always tells you that current process you're working on, where is that stored, in which folder is that lying. So right now this is lying in this employee integration folder. Then you can add a description also. So for example, I can write this process is my first process which will help me to pull the employees data from file and push it into database, something like this, right? And it is not mandatory you write the notes, but it's a good practice, right? Because if someone looks at your process, they understand what exactly are you trying to achieve in this process. So in our conventional programming languages, we used to have something like what? Comments, right? Comments are the non-executable statements which makes a program more understandable and readable. So since this is a UI based integration platform, right? This is like code free integration platform where there are minimal coding. There is a minimal coding involved, right? So they have given you different mechanisms to achieve the same thing which you used to do in your traditional programming languages. So here we can write notes, right? I hope this part is clear. Now, when we landed over here, if you see there are some shapes. Now this is a new thing which has come up, con beta. Let's ignore that beta. So first execute category. Within execute category, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12 shapes, right? So this is the first category, execute category. I'm going to cover each one of these. Okay. Then we go to the logic category. In logic category, again, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, right? So 10 in the logic category. Nobody is going to ask you this number. I'm just counting it. That's all. So that you get some time to skim through. That is the whole intent. Then there is a third category, connect category. Now in the connect category, there is a general, there is a technology, and there is application. There is event driven. So there are four categories of connectors. These are general connectors. General means these are very generic implementations, right? Which can be customized to establish the connectivity with different end system. These are some technology specific connectors which will help you to talk with the database, HTTP, disk, and whatnot. And then we have the application connector which will help you to talk with applications like Salesforce. This will help you to talk with the applications like MS Dynamics, Jira, ServiceNow, AWS. Then there are event driven, right? Event driven generally will be the queue based, right? If you see this event driven, these all are queue based. Okay, generally your event driven integrations, again this is a note, important note. Generally event driven integrations are near real time integrations, and these involve the usage of queues or topics. Okay, I'm telling the general convention. Okay, so if you go and see here, when you go to the event driven, can you see SQS? SQS stands for simple queue service. Again, can you see Atom queue? Kafka is about queuing. Rabbit MQ. Solaz is again about queuing. Salesforce platform events are about queuing. So this is how it looks like. Now what happened is, even though we did not drag and drop anything on the canvas, by default there is one shape which comes on the canvas, and the name of that shape is start shape. So another important note is we can't build any process in Boomi without a start shape. It is mandatory to have a start shape. Another important note is we can have at most one start shape in Boomi. So you cannot build anything in Boomi without a process. And within a process, you definitely need a start shape, right? Without start shape, you cannot develop any integrations. And what I'm saying is maximum you can have how many start shapes? You can have one. So there is nothing like maximum or minimum. You can have one start shape, that's all, right? You can have one start shape at, so now this is a start shape which came by default. Now star shape has different flavors. So if you go to the star shape, there are four different flavors, or there are four different types of star shape, and star shape marks the beginning of the flow. It is the beginning point of the flow. So this is the point from where your execution commences, right? So these are of four types: connector type, there is a trading partner type, there is another data pass-through type, and there is something called as no data type, right? You will gradually understand what are the differences among all these four different types. I do not want to cover all the differences at a time. For now, I just want to talk about two different types: connector and no data. When you want to start your flow by pulling the data from some end system, you want to start the flow by pulling the data from some end system, then you can go for the connector, which means your start shape will connect with some third party and will pull the data for you, or will accept the data from some third party. It will either go and pull the data from some end system, or it will allow an end system to push the data to you, and that will only happen when you're creating a start shape of connector type. I'll repeat: start shape of connector type means you're starting the flow by pulling some data from an end system or allowing an end system to push the data towards you. If you just want to start the flow with not pulling the data from any end system, or even not letting any end system to push the data you, but just you want to start, that's all, you can go for no data type. No data type means you are marking the beginning of the flow without pulling the data from any end system directly. And if you read this documentation, these small things are very important. When we should go for no data, select this option if the process should not receive or retrieve data from any source. That's what I'm saying. It should not receive or it should not retrieve. In other words, the process will be scheduled and run similar to cron or any other sort of scheduler. So whenever you want to run or develop a scheduled process, it's recommended to go for a start shape of no data type. But again, this is not a hard and fast rule. If you're developing a scheduled process, you can still go for the start shape of connected type, but they have given their recommendations, right? Now if you want to follow that recommendation, you can go ahead. If you have some different use cases where we have some exceptions and we do not want to go with the recommendations, you can deviate from the recommendations also, that's fine. Now right now I just want to start with a start shape of no data type and I want to hit OK. That's all. So can you see the representation of the shape change slightly? Now this is how start shape of no data type looks like. So how many types of start shape do we have?
Four
Four.
types.
We have,
Four.
we have four types of start shape, right? We have no data, we have connector, we have got data pass through, and we have got trading partner. We may not know all of these right now, which is fine. But since we are talking about the star shape, it is good to know that how many different types of star shape we have. And these all things will be there in your certification question. If you are following my notes properly, at least 60 to 70% of the certification questions are covered. Okay, not 100%, but at least 60 to 70% are covered. So now, and remaining will be covered in the hands-on. So now here we have a start shape of no data type. So what is opposite to start?
Stop.
Very nice. The opposite of start is stop. So we will see. So there are how many types of shapes? Execute, logic, connect. Three types, right? Execute is used to do the data manipulation. Logic means which has the tendency to change the flow of control. When I say change the flow of control means it can start helping you to execute something in parallel. It can help you to do something in loops. It can help you to change the flow of execution. It can help you to stop the flow of execution. Can you see there is a stop shape over here? Yes. So what I'm trying to say is if you do not know whether, like, because even right now I don't remember in which category which shape is there, you can just go here and type. Do we have any stop shape? Yes. So how did I do it? I dragged and drop it over here. That's all. You drag and drop over here, right? So you can drag and drop any number of times. How many stop shapes do we have? We have 4 stop shapes right now. One important thing you have to understand here is you may have any number of shapes lying on your canvas, but the ones which are connected to the start shape will only get executed. Important note. The shapes which are connected to the start shape will only get executed. Rest of the shapes will not have any impact on your flow of execution or your flow of data, right? So right now, is start shape connected with any stop shape?
No.
It is not, right? So when I will execute this process, when I say execute, when I'll run this process, none of these shapes will get executed. Okay. So how do I establish a connectivity? You drag and drop this wire. You will see this arrow mark. If you'll disconnect, this is a flat line, right? A flat horizontal line. The moment connectivity gets established, it turns into an arrow, which means the data will flow from start to stop shape, right? And let's say I feel these are useless. Select all of these at in one go and you say remove. Hit OK. That's all. You hit save, right? So now whatever we will do between these two shapes. This is my starting point. This is my ending point, and in between I will do all my logic building. Does that make sense? Any questions, guys, so far? Anyone who's not following things so far?
Clear, Sumit.
All right. So now another important note which I was talking about is this one, revision history. Do you see there are some revision history for this process? So the moment I hit on the save button, a new version gets created. Okay, so if I will hit the save button 100 times, 100 versions will get created. So maybe by now I have clicked on save 4 times, right? You can see the timestamp also. So how many versions got created? 4 versions got created. For each component, there is a unique ID called as component ID. For each component, there is a unique ID which is also called as a component ID. So this is how you can differentiate between shapes and components, because when we are new, right? I mean, for me, I've been working in Boomi for some time. It is really easy, right? But now, since you're starting fresh, it might happen that you don't understand, right? Whether it is a shape or component, or you don't understand the difference. So each component will have a component ID. Okay, each component will have a component ID created by date. So how many versions do we have? We have 4. Now I realize, okay, I want to go back to the version number 1. So you go here and this is your version number 1. So you see here, this view corresponds to revision 1 of the component, which is not the latest revision. But now let's say you have a requirement to make this as your revision number 1. Or I mean, you want to use this revision. Whatever you did just some time back, you want to forget about that. You want to use this as your latest revision. Just you have to click on save. The moment you hit on save, you will see your revision history gets incremented by 1, isn't it? So whatever was there 1, that became 5th, and this is now your latest version. And you always by default work on the latest version only. Are you guys following this part?
Yes, Sumit.
Whenever you are hitting on the save button, the revision history gets incremented. You always have an option to go back to the previous revision of the component and make that as a new version or your latest version by just hitting on the save button. Okay, so be very careful when you're hitting on the save button. Okay, when you're not sure about anything, just click on the cancel or the close button, whatever comes on your screen. Now I realize this is not the correct one for me. I want to go with the version number 4. So what should I do if I want to make this as my latest version? I
You
just
need
have
to
hit the save button. That's all. How many revisions should I have now?
6.
6. Very nice. We have 6. Guys, anything which is not clear here so far?
So when you say component ID, so we have used two components here. One is start and stop. So the component,
Start and stop are not components, and that's where people get confused. There is only one component which we have created so far, and that is process. Start and stop are shapes.
okay, that component type ID belongs to the process one.
Yes, absolutely correct. You go here again. So this component ID belongs to the process, and it does not belong to either start or stop.
Okay.
Actually, ideally, they should give the component type over here so that people are not confused, right? But this component ID belongs to the process.
Sumit, you told that now, if you want to like revert back to our previous work, or like if we do not want the changes which we have done earlier, but we want something else, like whatever we have saved. So if we want that thing to be edited and add new shapes to it, then what we have to do was first we have to save this and to like generate a new revision note, or like first we have to just edit that thing and then save. Like what
You
is
can
the
do
more
any of those things.
preferable?
I think the best way is first you save and then you do addition to that.
And one more thing you said, no, there are like you just introduced two types of shapes, start and stop. There are others also that in intermediate, like what, how we can, like you'll tell us further, or it's like there are only two shapes, start and stop.
No, no, I will cover all these shapes. But see, what is my way is we know the entry point, we know the exit, or we know where do we start from, where do we stop. Now this is the journey. This is the journey which you see is we have to live together, right, in the coming sessions. So there will
Okay,
be a lot
and
of shapes which will be adding between these two shapes, because having a start and stop does not make sense, right, until we do something in between these two.
so we cannot add anything after stop. Like it's that if you want to add a component, we have to add prior to the stop. A shape
Yes,
if you want to add. And you
typically
said that,
yes.
and if whole like collection, we can say that the collection of shape is a component.
No, that's
So
not true.
how?
You can say
So
a process is a component which can have n number of shapes encapsulated, or which can have n number of shapes orchestrated. But a component is a combination of n number of shapes. That's not true. Okay, within a process you can add n number of shapes. That is 100% correct. But a component is not a shape or a component. Sometimes there are some shapes which might need components, but usually components have their own existence also. Process is one such component which has the capability to combine many other components and shapes. So to achieve the integration use case, we need the shapes also, we need the components also.
Like if we like whenever we view the use case diagram while making projects, like we draw a use case diagram there. So the component contains the shape. Like I'm not getting actually what is the exact difference between the shape and the component. Like
Okay.
earlier you said, now that process,
Shapes,
this is a
shapes will
process.
help you to shapes will help you to play around with the data, whereas the components might help you to either pull the data or push the data or I mean, you with components typically you may not be doing any kind of actions on the data. Okay,
Okay,
it may
and
help
like
you to
process is
represent
a
the data.
type of component. Process is a kind of component,
That's correct.
and there are many like, types of components. We are just discussing process right now.
That's also correct. So
Okay.
if you again go to new, it says create component and how many, there are so many types, right?
Okay. Apart from process, if we select any of these, then we won't be able to use shapes.
We can,
It will
that's
be
what I'm
wrong.
saying. I'm saying we for achieving the use case we need to use both, but ideally these two are two different things. So so let me do one thing. Um, so here we were there. Now let me add a new component. Okay, and that new component is, let's say, map. Okay, I'm just creating a dummy map for now to answer it. I mean, these all are all valid questions. When I started learning Boomi, I used to have these all questions in my mind, and so this is kind of a dummy map. Okay, I'm just save and close. So if you see here, this map is a component. Okay, so earlier we talked about process component. Now there is another component, map. Ideally I should do some configurations. I'm not doing any configuration for now, which is fine. Okay, so map is a component, right? Any component you will see in the component explorer. Do you see right now map in the process?
No, no.
No, right? Now what happens is you will use process component, and within process you will use different shapes. Okay,
Okay.
now
Yeah, we
there
are using as start and stop. And in process we are using. In button map, it's already built. Okay. Now
so
we can use this.
now there is one shape. Hear me out. There is another shape called as map shape. Now a lot of people get confused. Map is a shape or map is a component. So these are two things. Map is a shape. So the one which we are seeing over here right now, this is a shape. Okay. Now for this shape to work, it needs a reference to a component. Map is a shape which needs reference to a component to work. And now if you see here, do you see you can select
Map.
some of the, so just now we created one map, either you can use that or else you can create a new one. Now now if let's say I create the new one, you might get confused whether I'm working on a shape or a component. If anytime you see revision history, you see the component ID, that very clearly will tell you whether you're working on a shape or a component, right? So the point I'm
Okay.
trying to make is shape themselves, not every shape, but many of the shape themselves references many components, and that is why components are reusable, right? Even this map can refer this component, and another map can also refer the same component, right? So within a process, we will ideally do the orchestration of different shapes, but then these shapes, some of these shapes will refer the different components.
For data, like components are fetching, like you told, that it won't be manipulating data. So component is basically will provide data to these maps, something like
Uh,
that.
I mean, see, yes, that is partially correct. Sometimes that component might have a role to manipulate the data, or basically you can say it can just it will just help the shape to perform the action which it is supposed to do. So the job of map is to do the transformation. Okay, and for that to happen, this map shape needs the help of a component, and that name of that component is map component. Another example, connect. So I take, let's say, connector. Now this connect is a shape. Now when I go here, this connect shape needs what? Connection details, and it needs operation details. Now this
Yes.
connection is a component, operation is a component. How do I know that? When I click on plus and I'll just hit save, can you see a revision history over here? Can you see a
Yes.
component ID over here? So the point
Yes.
I'm trying to make is we use shapes, but within those shapes, we might need to refer some components. And that's why we say a process is one such component which can refer or which kind of orchestrates. When I say orchestrate, I mean it combines many other components and shapes together. Yeah.
Okay, I got the point. Nice.
So right now we have a start shape, we have a stop shape. And which shape is this? This is a
Map shape.
map shape.
Map.
So based on our use case, we will decide which all shapes do we need. Right? Any
Oh,
questions, guys, from anyone? I know we are going really slow, and that's fine, because if I'll rush, it will be only me who will be following. So initial few sessions, let's be slow, because you have to, absorb all these navigations. I go from here to there. So I want you should to be familiar, right? We should be doing these basic things n number of times so that you don't need to even remember it. Automatically, sticks to your mind. If you see same things, same kind of shapes being dragged and dropped every now and then. I think we'll take a pause over here. We'll continue tomorrow unless you have any questions to ask. And just one quick note, whenever you're joining the session, just make sure you're joining from one device. If I'll see one person from two device, either you tell me this is the reason why you're joining, or else I'll remove a person from another device. Okay. I mean, sometimes it might happen, you have some issues, you're using mobile phone or laptop both, but you have to let me know prior. Otherwise, I'll remove, if I'll see one person joining with two names, I'll remove one of the connections.